Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares with the news from the world economy. Coming up, Mexico's seniors struggle to make ends meet, and the nuclear agreement with Iran remains vague. First, the headlines. Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis said Greece intends to meet all obligations to all its creditors following a meeting with IMF officials. Varoufakis said the government also plans to reform Greece deeply and to try to improve the efficacy of negotiations with its creditors. IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde said she welcomed Greece's confirmation to make a loan payment due to the IMF later this week. But many Eurozone authorities remain skeptical of Athens' ability to implement the necessary reforms. And some have suggested Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras ditch his far-left Syriza party and form a new coalition to make a bailout possible.
We had a fruitful, extremely productive discussion about the Greek reform proposals. Our government is a reformist government. We are intent upon reforming Greece deeply. This is our promise to the Greek people. So having an opportunity to discuss the reform program here at the IMF with the managing director is an excellent step towards that direction. We also discussed ways of improving the efficacy of the negotiations that are happening both at the Brussels Group and in Greece at the technical level. Greece has been party to Bretton Woods. It is a founding member of the International Monetary Fund, and maintaining and improving lines of communication as we are doing, and as we also did today, is essential for us. It's very important, especially in view of the fact that the IMF is a partner in Greece's attempt to exit the crisis of the last 5 years.
Japanese shares slipped on Monday following disappointing jobs data from the U.S. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 dipped 0.4% in early trading as investor sentiment regarding Friday's lackluster U.S. data seeped into the Japanese market. The report showed the U.S. created just 126,000 new jobs last month, below expectations of 245,000 in a Reuters poll. But the unexpectedly weak non-farm payrolls report may also delay interest rate hikes in the U.S., gaining support for other markets. Mexican state oil giant Pemex expects to meet its 2015 output target of 646,000 barrels per day, despite a platform exploding last week. Following the explosion on Wednesday, which killed 4 and left 3 missing, Pemex shuttered production of 220,000 barrels per day. Between Sunday and Monday, however, it had brought 170,000 barrels per day back online. Mexico is the world's number 10 crude producer at 2.3 million barrels per day, down about a third from a peak of 3.4 million barrels per day in 2004.
The monthly output for the region was 650,000 barrels. Now it is bringing in 430,000 because of effects from the April 1st fire. We hope to achieve 600,000 barrels to return to almost 92% of the production for the month of April.
The Saudi-led military coalition on Sunday approved the Red Cross to deliver aid to Yemen. The aid agency has been negotiating for nearly a week to deliver life-saving supplies and equipment to Yemen. The ICRC, which deploys 300 aid workers in Yemen, on Saturday called for a 24-hour humanitarian pause to allow aid to reach people cut off by 11 days of airstrikes. According to the Saudi-led coalition, however, arrangements had been made, but the ICRC pulled out of the arrangement.
A trip was arranged for the Red Cross in the morning at 9 a.m. No one came. We were told after fixing the date that there is a request to change the plane. They seem to have chosen a plane from a company that cannot go to Yemen. They have asked to postpone the journey until a later time. That is the case with the Red Cross.
U.S. federal law enforcement agencies contacted several top Herbalife members last week regarding their business practices. The inquiries are focused on the activities of about 10 top Herbalife members for their involvement in what some say is an illegal pyramid scheme. Herbalife said it is cooperating with authorities on requests for information relating to trading of its shares and to its business practices. Hedge fund mogul William Ackman has campaigned against Herbalife since December 2012, when he revealed a $1 billion short bet against the company. Herbalife last month won the dismissal of a lawsuit that claimed it had falsely portrayed itself as a legitimate company. Two Israeli startup companies raised nearly $50 million at the end of last week's investment rounds. Via, a ride-sharing application that competes with public transportation, raised $27 million, while Tapingo, helping college students order food, raised $22 million. Both startups were founded by graduates of elite technology units of the Israel Defense Forces. Many of Israel's successful entrepreneurs started in the IDF's Signal Intelligence Corps unit, 8200, and the Talpiot program for soldiers with outstanding IT abilities. Mexico's pension system is badly underfunded as more than half of the population works off the books. And with so many jobs in the informal sector, many of those allowed retirement benefits still struggle to make ends meet.
70 and still at work. Around 22,000 seniors volunteer to pack up groceries in exchange for tips in Mexico's supermarkets. Depending on the customer's generosity, they can earn up to $20 a day, a much-needed extra income since the minimum pension only gives around $80 a month, a bit more than half the minimum wage. A former chewing gum factory employee, Javier Castillo, won't stop working anytime soon.
No. The pension they give me only covers expenses like water, electricity, or phone bills. What I make here, I spend on food.
Only a quarter of Mexico's 11 million senior citizens receive a pension, since more than half of the population here works off the books. With so many jobs in the informal sector, the pension system is badly underfunded, and many of those allowed retirement benefits still struggle to make ends meet. A government program to reintegrate seniors in the workplace has been promoting volunteer work in supermarkets. Since the elderly only receive tips instead of a formal salary, retirees are still entitled to their pension checks.
¿Les abres los espacios tú o los van a abrir ellos o van a andar?
We need to open spaces for them, or they'll do it themselves. They'll work as street traders, they'll take up some risky business where they could have an accident. So this program is better, it's more controlled.
Un evento o alguna cosa, pues les busca, bueno, pues mejor esto, ¿no? Que está más controlado, que pues...
It isn't the policy we love the most, but as the song goes, that's what we can offer.
Como dice la canción, es lo que hay.
Mexico pushed through a fiscal reform aimed at luring people out of informal work in return for better social security coverage. Still, those already past the retirement age have little choice but to stuff grocery bags, hoping to receive a few pesos for their efforts. It's not the retirement she had planned, but 75-year-old Natalia Aguilar says she's just grateful there's a way for her to make some extra cash.
Todavía podemos trabajar.
We are still able to work. I feel really competent to keep on working, so it's good that they give us opportunities like this one.
Como esta que nos brindan en estos lugares.
After 30 years working as a seamstress, Aguilar keeps standing, toiling away at the end of a checkout lane.
Iran and the P5+1 countries finally came to an agreement over Tehran's nuclear program, allowing international sanctions to be suspended. The agreement, which may evade a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, would also reopen the 80 million strong market to the West. But as oil is one of Iran's biggest exports, it remains to be seen how that will affect the world market. Joel Kruger, founder of JKonFX investment firm, joins us for a discussion on Iran following this report.
On April 2nd, Iran and 6 world powers reached a framework agreement for Iran's nuclear development in the upcoming decade. Iran has agreed to curb its nuclear activity by reducing the size and grade of its uranium storage, the number of centrifuges that enrich uranium, and the maximum fissile purity of the machinery. Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, returned from the Switzerland negotiations with overwhelming applause from many of Iran's citizens. Iranians have high hopes for a boost in the economy once the agreement is settled.
Currently, the unjust and unilateral sanctions have affected our auto industry, our aviation industry, our oil tankers, and etc. Our assets have been blocked in other countries. Hopefully, this nuclear deal and lifting of sanctions will cause us to witness an upward trend in the country.
The compromise is a momentous moment towards potential reconciliation between the United States and Iran, since they became adversaries during the 1979 Iranian Revolution. However, the deal is not set in stone yet, and some Iranians are skeptical of the agreement and its upcoming review process.
In my view, if this deal is going to end up against our best interest in nuclear technology, then it's better if it doesn't go through.
The deal may not be favored by everyone, but many Iranians understand the talks in Switzerland had many aspects to cover and were not starting on easy grounds.
After all, we were stuck between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. When the new nuclear negotiating team entered, they were able to save the system from that position both in the field of foreign policy and even domestic policy.
We reached a historic understanding with Iran.
There is still a long ways to go before the nuclear agreement is finalized. U.S. President Barack Obama and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani must get the deal approved by the conservatives at home. Both leaders took a large risk by opening the dialogue, so there is still much left up in the air. After the agreement was struck, France warned to be careful of over-optimism.
Israel will not accept an agreement which allows a country that vows to annihilate us to develop nuclear weapons.
While the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is against the agreement because of beliefs it will increase the chances for war in the Middle East. Netanyahu has traditionally had the support of U.S. Republicans who could oppose and block the agreement from the American side. The framework agreed upon must be settled by June 30th. Until then, all sanctions remain on Iran.
Joel Kruger, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
Absolutely. So what do you make of this? I mean, clearly the situation with Iran, are the sanctions going to be suspended? How long are they going to suspend it for? I mean, we're not entirely sure where this is going to lead, but what we do know is that 80 million people essentially are waiting for their market to be reopened, and it might have a great impact for the world economy. Where do you see this heading?
So first of all, like you said, we're going to have some time before everything plays out. But from a financial market standpoint, if we were to talk short term, if this was 8 months ago and oil was above $100 and stock markets were collapsing, I would say it would have maybe more of an impact on short-term markets. But given the fact that we have oil where it is right now at depressed levels and stock markets and asset prices at elevated levels, on a short-term basis, I'm not sure that the impact I would say would be negligible. Medium term, however, of course, you are opening up, an emerging market that's untapped and resource rich, and so there is that potential for plenty of opportunity. But at the same time, we have to remember that we're doing a deal with a regime right now that is, supporting terrorism in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Lebanon, and even in Israel. So there is that risk to uncertainty in the markets as well on that side.
Okay, and I presume this kind of risk, this geopolitical risk that we see here coming with Iran, would have a very different impact than, say, the job reports that we saw coming out of Friday from the U.S. Can you give us a little more about that?
Sure. So there was a big employment report, as you know, out of the U.S. on Friday, and it was a difficult report to read because we saw, on the one hand, we saw a very discouraging non-farm payroll release coming in much lower than expected at 125,000, but at the same time, we had unemployment hold steady and wage growth picking up. So there is risk, I think, from a currency perspective, that the dollar might sell off a little bit over the short term. But overall, I don't think it changes the picture up, and we see the dollar continue to appreciate.
And as we saw, I mean, there was basically an effect on Japan. A lot of the other Asia-Pacific markets, of course, are closed because of holidays. Europe also is closed. But there's not really been much of an impact beyond that. And beyond that, I mean, essentially, a lot of the investors expect that it will even bring up the market slightly because this might push off the interest rate decision in the U.S., right?
Right. So there is that argument. People are trying to figure out what the Fed's timeline is. The longer the Fed waits, the more arguably it is better for risk assets and for stock markets. This might push back the Fed's timeline a little bit. I don't believe that we see the Fed's timeline being pushed back outside of 2015 into 2016. I think this might mean the difference between a rate hike that we see in June or September. So maybe now we see a rate hike in September, but I still think the Fed pushes forward, and it will have a negative impact on stock markets globally.
What would be the impact on the U.S. dollar? The U.S. dollar has been extremely strong.
Right. So I think that the U.S. dollar trajectory stays the same. I think that short term, as we get out of this Easter holiday weekend, we could see some dollar depreciation. But on a medium-term basis, the monetary policy divergence theme between the United States and the rest of the central banking world, and you mentioned Japan and the Bank of Japan, continues to be quite pronounced, and that will continue to support the U.S. dollar.
Okay. And how would this essentially, in the closing comment, how would this affect stocks markets?
So again, I believe that stock markets, if you look at stock markets since the inception of this new monetary policy, this emergency monetary policy to deal with the financial markets crisis, we've seen central banks step up and effectively artificially support asset prices to infuse a sense of confidence in and raise and elevate sentiment. So we've seen ultra low interest rates, even to the point where we see negative rates to prop. And now that we're going to reverse this and move in the other direction, we should start to see stock markets pull back.
Kruger from JKonFX, thanks for joining us on The Economy Show. Thank you very much.
Good to be here.
Tjong-Alvares, thanks for joining us, and join us again tomorrow for more on The Economy.